think about when you first started in as much detail as you can.
Okay.
What was an average day like?
Oh.
When you're starting your own business,
Mm-hmm.
what did it look like? What time are you up? What time are you at the gym? What does your schedule look like? Just run us through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's up at 3:45 in the morning to be to the gym by 4:45 in the morning, which means from about 3:15 to 3:45, I'm in a panic mode thinking I'm going to miss my alarm. So,
Yeah.
right,
Yep.
if you guys that have worked early mornings,
You know that.
resonates
Yes.
with you, right?
Yes.
Then I would get to the gym and I would train people till 10 or 11. And this is like very early on in my career. I'd train people to 10 or 11. Around 11, I would eat. Then I would work out. And I used to work out for a really long time. Like I'm following like old school Tudor Bumpers stuff, like half-hour workouts, right? So that would get me to like 2:30 or so. I would shower at the gym, eat again. Next appointment's at 4. Then I would do that till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And here's what's really crazy. When I was young, I was working my training business outside of a Gold's Gym. I had an exclusivity contract with this Gold's Gym where I hired and staffed all their trainers, and I had a revenue share with the gym. So I'd get done at 9 o'clock. I'd go back to that same shower. I'd take a shower, but I'd put on regular clothes. And the Gold's was in this shopping center, and there was a place behind it called Crossroads, and then there was another place down a little bit more called One, which was a club.
Yeah.
So I would literally go to Crossroads, drink, go to One, drink. Instead of going home, I would walk back to Gold's Gym, use my key because they gave me a key.
Yeah.
I would open up the back door. I would go sleep in my office from 1 or 2 in the morning till 3:45.
Oh my
Wake
gosh.
up, shower at the gym again, and start my workday. And I did that for years. And it's not every night, but I would say at least 2 nights out of the week, that was going down for sure.
Wow. That's crazy, dude.
Yep.
That's crazy. Okay. Now, here's the thing. And this is what I don't think a lot of people understand. And you and I have talked about this, but I think it's important to kind of like beat this point into people's heads. When you open your own gym, and I just feel free to disagree if you want. I feel like you should already be a really good trainer before you start all this other stuff, right? Because when you're just a trainer, that's the whole emphasis, right? You can spend all your free time thinking about coaching and program design and all that. The second you decide I'm going out on my own, now you have all these different roles and responsibilities, right? You are the cleaning crew. You are your sales team, your marketing team, your operations team. Like you are everything, because unless you are just like independently wealthy and somebody has just blessed your business with all this money, you don't have an admin. You don't have a cleaning crew. Like you are all the things. So agree, disagree. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, I 100% agree. And I think that is one of the things that is a little disheartening for some coaches and trainers when they realize that the market doesn't really care how good you are at the job. And I'm not so sure they can always appreciate it. But let me back up. They do care. Okay. Yeah. But you're going to have to develop other skill sets to separate yourself from other trainers that they perceive as being as good as you. Those skill sets are things that you probably have very little experience with unless you like work in a sales-based environment, because sales and marketing are incredibly important. But what I said, I've said this a bunch lately, and me and Luca talk about this in Built to Last, is we think everybody should build a coaching first business. If you get really good at that skill of coaching, it translates really well into leadership and guiding a team. The other forgotten element of this is if you're not really good at the job and you don't pay very well, which most people don't when they first start their business, why would anybody want to come work for you?
Yes.
So by really focusing on that skill set of coaching, when people come into your world, you have something to actually pay forward to them other than a paycheck. Yeah. So that coaching first, being a trainer first, is essential. And I think a lot of people, they run from that. They don't double down on being a great coach first. They assume that they can make more money by becoming the business guy.
Yeah.
And we both know a lot of dudes that are still trainers who make a killing and make way more than many gym owners.
Yes.
So, but you can also make great money running a gym. But the common denominator between those two examples is being really good at coaching, really good at the job.
Okay. Practical advice. How does somebody do that?
You know, I don't know if I was very practical. I think I was obsessed and kind of consumed. And I'm sure you do. And I've been very open about, like, I think this came from deep insecurity. I would have called it ambition when I was younger, but it's only because I didn't understand how insecurity can drive a lot of that.
Yep.
And, I'm reading stuff from guys like you and Cressy and a lot of really smart dudes. And I'm like, man, they all got that like master's degree thing. I ain't got none of that.
Right.
So you have to consume enough information and participate in enough things to where like people respect me on that level. So a ruthless commitment to reading. I used to crush VHSs like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, yeah.
I used Automobile University, always listening to something. I would drive to gyms like yours and other people's, like just to get as much immersion as I can. And I think that's the goal. It's easy to feel like you're the man when you're in your own place or working out of a gym. I think you got to get around other people to realize how brilliant a lot of people are in our industry. And I think that can shift your focus.
Here's the thing that I love about this. I remember you and I want to say it was one of Luca's seminars, probably the Orlando one. I think it was Orlando because I was down there, you were down there, and we were just catching up. And I think we talked about this. And you and I, we'd known each other for a while, but I felt like you kind of opened up and you kind of said something to that effect, right? But you and I had so many discussions. I'm like, dude, you're a phenomenal coach, And
Yeah.
so that's where I think if you are obsessed or it is coming from a place of insecurity, like there's other stuff going on there. Like you have to work on the person first because nothing you can do from a training perspective will fix that. But on the flip side, that also doesn't mean you're not a really high level coach.
Sure.
And I think that makes me sad sometimes because I'll talk to some brilliant coaches. I'm like, dude, you're amazing at what you do. But then I can also tell just from the discussion, like, hey, man, but you've got some internal stuff. Like if you don't fix that first, nothing you do from a continuing education, no matter who you train, like all the big names, it's not going to matter until you fix some of that internal stuff. And I know that kind of goes off the charts a little bit, but I do think that's valuable.
That is a huge component of this. And I don't know if I would be here today, and I do mean that literally, if I had not read a lot of personal development stuff before I got into training.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, the way I manage my life, the way I was living would not have allowed me to be successful in any way. And I had a lot of excuses why things were that way. But once I started reading about personal development, I was like, oh, wait a minute. You mean I don't have to believe the things that I believe? I can choose different perspectives. I can align those perspectives with the values that I respect in other people. And if I do that long enough, maybe I'll become like that person. Because I talk to a lot of gym owners, a lot, every week.
Yeah.
And one of the things that always kills me is really good coaches who are not confident.
Yeah.
And two of them come to mind right now. I'm not going to call them out on the show because I don't know how they feel about it, but there's two guys kind of in my world and ecosystem who are very good coaches. And we've had this conversation many times, like the minute that you know it and you believe it, it's going to take off.
Yep.
I can tell you how much I respect you, how sharp I think you are, but until you feel that in here, it's only going to be so useful. Your coaching pedigree only goes so far if you can't show up in authority and with confidence and really dominate, for a lack of better words. Like you've got to show up and do that consistently. And you'd think like somebody knows my understanding of training is elite and they should be able to take that into a training session. But you're right. There's all this like subconscious programming from how we were raised and even previous clients and like that stuff, it's sticky and it can mess with you and keep you from really fulfilling your potential.
Generally, my speed sessions take like 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, right? Talk to me a little bit about that because I do think there's this misconception of, and I see it, dude. I see it when I see people talking about speed camps. I run speed camps. And I would like to think I try and do a very good job of it and uphold your standards. But I do see these speed camps where kids are doing speed for an hour straight.
Yeah.
So would you talk to me a little bit about where speed fits into your overall program? Because I think if people haven't heard you talk about that before, that's going to be really enlightening and eye-opening for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny because that same thing, we run a lot of speed. When you're running a speed camp, that's a different animal because what you're trying to do is introduce concepts, and you got a lot of concepts to whether it's coaches or athletes. And so, a lot of times you're going to do more than you typically might if those were your athletes that you're training in your facility for, growth. And so typically what I try to do, I base it on the concept of leaving the facility for myself and my athletes with a win every day. And if I want to get a win, I have to reduce and simplify what I'm teaching. So if I'm teaching a speed pattern, a multi-directional pattern or something, I try to limit it to 1 or possibly 2. And what I'll do is if it goes beyond that, it's usually because they've been linked in a specific pattern.
Sure.
So for example, for basketball, when during a basketball season, like this past year, when I would teach a speed pattern that was important to us for that day, it might be, Mike, sometimes it was 2 minutes to 4 minutes, but because most speed patterns happen within 1 to 3 seconds, and that's a long time. You think about you put a kid on a baseline and you say sprint, and I'll blow the whistle when we hit 3 seconds. Most of them are going to be 3/4 of the court. So it's more than people think. And so what I would do is we would say we wanted to work on this closeout technique, and we were going to work on a snap shuffle to a lateral run. Okay, very, very synchronized patterns. And so an athlete would get up, snap, lateral run, bam, you're out, next, go. We might get 10 to 15 reps on each side for each athlete. And so when we're done with that little session right there, the athletes are like, okay, I get it now. I understand it.
Right.
I'm able to get them to understand level changes, how we replace, like we categorize a power shuffle where we replace footprints or we exceed footprints, as where a snap shuffle is we're short of the front footprint. You know what I mean? So when we do that now with athletes, they can walk out of that practice because we usually huddle and I'm saying, okay, like I might say, hey, Mike, what was something that you learned today on our movement? And you'd say, Coach, it really made a lot of sense when you said stay in the tunnel because it just helped me stay level. And so we walk out of there having gotten faster today, whether it was literally getting somewhat faster or having an understanding of what speed means today. And so my sessions are based around that concept of can we get a win, and then we'll tackle the next one the next day. And what that did for me and my athletes is we grew in I'll go back to the word literacy. My kids became really literate on what movement meant and how it affected their play. And what's important, especially if we're talking about basketball, is we have these general overall movements we want to be good at. But if I'm in a help position and I have to help on a drive and then recover back, well, that's going to be a snap shuffle to a lateral run to a closeout technique. So if I'm teaching these speed concepts and they understand them really well, now they play the game better because they understand speed better. Yes. And so even when I had the Speed Academy and I wasn't necessarily working a sport, I was working on speed, I always gave context. I'm like, okay, you soccer athletes that are marking someone, well, this is what you have to do. Basketball and tennis, this is what you have to do, and this is why. We walked out of there with wins every day. So that's partly why I reduced how much volume I gave, and I kind of went after a specific pattern. And during a warm-up, we might hit all 7 patterns just because we're warming them up, but we targeted, and it was up on our dry erase board, hey, today, these are the 1 to 2 skills, and this is what we're diving into. So we call it the tree principle. Here's the tree, here's the stump, and then the roots are all the options off that one skill, which is the trunk of that tree. And I love that. Yeah, it really helps the athletes understand, and they walk out of there with pretty good wins for the day.
I told people for years, that's what got me started. Because none of us we're not just indoctrinated and we're great coaches day one, like you're a great human and you care about people first. And then that gives you time to become a great coach on the back end.
Yeah. I mean, the weight room, it's the easiest thing of the whole aspect. It really is. I can talk about it. It's squat, hinge, push, pull, lunge, rotate. You
Right.
progress them over the time. You figure out what stimulus you need. And, this might steer people the wrong way or whatever, but it really doesn't matter what implement you use either.
No, it doesn't.
It's just like, you can use a barbell. If they're good at barbells, great. Use barbells.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Landmines, trap bars,
Doesn't
the
matter.
Smith machines, doesn't matter, right?
Right.
You're just trying to build the capacity of squat, hinge, push, pull, lunge, rotate, move the direction that you want to move. And then you figure out stimulus from there. And that's really simple. And then all the methodologies that you want to use, that's fine. I will say, this idea of periodization is almost hilarious in team sports, especially you're not making practice. You don't draw up how many minutes a player plays. So there's not really any true periodization, so for me, that's what the force plates were for. How do I kind of create my own little system of periodization in a sense where, stimulus on this day, stimulus on this day, stimulus on this day. What's the equation to get us the highest jump height that we possibly can at the best body weight for that person on game day? And those were the metrics that I was worried about.
Yeah.
And I would look at it for hydration standpoint too. I wanted them to be 1 or 2% above their mean body weight on game day, because then I know that they're fully fueled and fully hydrated. And that's how I combated cramps and different stuff like that. So it's just like you have answers to as many questions as you can have. But all the soft skills is what drives all of that.
Yeah.
Every decision you make and how you implement it, how you present yourself, how you're presenting it to the athlete, how you're presenting it to the coach, and really understanding where you're trying to get to and how you get there. It's all soft skills. Like you can read 3 textbooks and probably figure out, okay, I can do this, this, and this, right? Like the first textbook I ever read was, Big But Boring, right? It's like, oh, we have to do this. Like this is what we have to do, and then I'm running like Jim Windler stuff, and then I'm running this, and it's like you try all these different things, and you realize like, man, it's kind of all the same, and
it all kind of works.
It all works. Like it doesn't matter what you do. You can run Poliquin, or you can run freaking Windler, or you can run whatever you want to do.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. So I'm really interested. How have you navigated this? And people that maybe do a weights class or an advanced PE. That's what we call it here, advanced PE. How have you navigated that? And maybe how can we find ways to work in conjunction or work more hand in hand with these programs to try and give the athletes the best chance for success?
Yeah, the lines of communication are always a little blurred. I mean, if you have every kid who's got a private trainer reaching out to the strength coach, that becomes a massive amount of
just back and forth.
Just back and forth for the coach, right?
Yeah.
So our communication with most of these coaches is very minimal, if at all. And so I think what happens is we kind of become reactive in a sense. We have to work around what training they're doing or not doing, and that kind of becomes our program. And I'll say in general, it's like they're not getting enough movement prep, they're not getting enough single leg or split stance work, and they're not doing enough dynamic effort stuff.
Yeah.
So it's pretty obvious what we need to work on.
Yep.
As far as I'm speaking from, a coach in the private sector, and I've reached out to a few guys that I really, know, like, and trust who are working with high school programs that I think do an amazing job. Like I watch what they're doing and I'm like, wow, like to coordinate 20 to 30 athletes the way that you do is just, it's pristine. It's elite. Like I have so much respect for these guys.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you handle this? Because they're on both sides. They're like a lot of these kids, we've got some D1 athletes. They're working with their private trainer, mom and dad got their guy they're working for.
Right.
And I'm also working with athletes in the private sector who, have their own school programs. And so it's just this really challenging situation. But at the end of the day, it has to come down to communication. And the best place that I start is just communicating with my athletes. What are you guys doing? Let me see your program. Let's have a conversation. And then it really goes back to my assessments. So we do jumps on the force plates every single week, just counter movement jump.
Yep.
And I want to see how my athletes are responding. So one of the interesting things is when a lot of our kids start their sport, so they have tryouts, which is effectively Hell Week.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense from like a progressive standpoint, right? Easing kids in and stuff. It's like, who's been doing stuff?
Smash them right out of the gate.
Yeah, especially with basketball. What I see from like mid-October is when they start. So like from mid-October to early December, which is primarily preseason for us in Kentucky, their vertical jumps drop, sometimes by like 2 inches.
Yeah.
Which is pretty significant.
Absolutely.
So we see this dip, right? And it's the whole fatigue mask fitness. These kids are running a lot. Coach is trying to get them in shape for the season. And so we just see their legs are just dead. And so because of that, we can make some informed decisions about their training and what we should do. When we do our speed stuff, we time a lot of it. I look at a lot of technical stuff as well. We take a lot of video. I'll give kids feedback, that kind of stuff. I think that's really valuable long-term for just working their efficiency. But if they're running slow or their times drop off pretty significantly from what our expectation is, sometimes they might get 2 really good reps and that's it.
Yeah,
we're able to just make some changes within the session that I think are really valuable for managing the fatigue. Because if I have an athlete that's tired or fatigued, they're not going to be very fast. They're not going to be very explosive. So I'll go to work on other things that I think are going to be important for them. Hey, they're banging on the court a lot right now. Maybe we need some more isometrics or some slow tempo stuff to work on tendon health to make these guys just resilient and robust. Maybe we're doing a little bit more upper body training because we've got a little bit more bandwidth here. So it's just navigating that stuff. But again, you can't do that if you don't communicate. And I don't know if I foresee us really being able to communicate with coaches in these programs. They're so busy. Each team is bringing 15 plus athletes in and they've got multiple teams to contend with. I just think it would be overwhelming for them to try to have individual conversations about each athlete who's getting training outside of their program. So in the private sector, I feel like we have to be reactive. And in order to do that, we have to have good assessments that inform our decision making, because I can write a program, which is my hypothesis on what's going to happen the next 4 weeks, but it's going to break down.
Sure. It really
Isn't it wild to see like a player pivot and blow something out?
Yeah.
Right?
Especially when you think how many times he's done that before.
So for sure. So again, for sure, load management's become the buzzword for these last number of years. And, and that's it. There's just too many games being played from a young age all the way up into the pros. Not enough recovery, not enough adaptation. But then again, too, we have to question what it is we're doing or not doing.
Yeah.
Right. In these settings.
For sure.
So I've been fortunate enough. So you mentioned a heel injury. I blew my plantar fascia out about probably almost this time last year, and for a good 7-8 months, like I was modifying pretty much, right?
Yeah.
With everything I was doing. So my own game, I'm good around mid range, good around I'm kind of an undersized post player. So I've always been around the basket, and middies are good. My threes were inconsistent.
Yep.
So I'm like, all right, I'm injured now. What am I going to do? And what really brought me down this rabbit hole was I'm working with these, because I am on the court, not as much as I am doing the strength conditioning side, but I am a liaison at times on the court. So I'm a bit of a hybrid in that regard. And I was filling in for a coach that had to step out. I think he had to go coach a game on one of the next courts or whatever. And he's telling these players to go here, there, the other, right? And I'm watching them shoot the ball, and I just stop the drill. Like, guys, have you ever, besides your dad or your teacher maybe at school, like, has anybody ever taught you how to shoot a ball? All 4 of these kids at the time shook their head to me, no, right?
That's wild.
Well, that's where I'm getting at, is all these clubs I've worked with over the years. And it kind of ties into the training realm too, where we just think more is better, right? Yeah. In terms of shooting, just shooting more, we coaches think is going to produce a better outcome.
Right.
And if you've got a broken shot and that there's just no alignment, just your physics are off, right?
Yeah.
There's no perfect shot, but you got way too much variability happening here on your shot. essentially making it harder for you to get the ball in the net. Anyway, so long story short is I hired Mike Dunn.
Yeah.
I don't know if Mike Dunn's I think he's in the New Jersey area, if I'm not mistaken, but our club had him 2 summers ago for a shooting clinic at our club for a week. Mind you, I was in school all week at the time, so I couldn't make it.
Oh.
And I asked one of the coaches I work with, how was the camp? And he said, 'cause I knew of Mike and of his work prior, but again, I would have liked to have been there. But he said, I was like, what was the good? What was the bad to come out of it? He says, honestly, the only real bad to come out of it is as soon as the camp was over, all these kids went back to their shooting form the way they were doing it the very next week.
Oh my gosh.
So we have to hold them accountable to keep doing.
Yeah.
So I'm having dialogue with these coaches in that, practice plans. Some don't even have any, which is wild.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're just coming in on a whim and going for it.
Yeah.
And then, the ones that do, listen, if it's important, you gotta microdose these things throughout your practice plan, right?
Yep.
So once, anyway, I consulted with Mike and I paid for his little subscription, and he wants to see your videos of your shot, and that's how he gets back and coaches you. And man, he gets back to you right away. Like he's
awesome.
Solid. And I love the way he coaches it because of the simplicity of it.
Yep.
Again, it abides to physics. It's just, we're trying to make your shot more efficient and easier. The sequencing is what he calls in his shooting. And anyway, man, it helped my shooting tremendously.
Yeah.
So now I'm just stealing his curriculum, right?
Yeah.
Like what I do with all my work, right?
Yeah.
I'm just the best stealer in regards to, I'm not reinventing the wheel here.
Right.
And I've been fortunate with these 2 clubs that they've been giving me hours, just giving shooting clinics and shooting programs to these kids. Now I've gotten it to a point now because I have some of these kids that don't see me for strength and conditioning, but now I can be having these conversations with them, or even fuse a little bit of it. Hey, if I have this time earlier, can you come in and we can,
right.
Yeah. So, because what I think it was Paul George I seen did a reel on this, maybe a year or 2 ago. And obviously he was talking about what 3 fundamental big rock things here do we need to be playing at a high level? NBA aside, I think just even these young athletes need to understand that these are the 3 things. Obviously you have to be able to shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I'm alluding to is a lot of these kids just haven't been coached how to shoot a ball.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then the cool thing too is what these experts are saying is that these shooting experts are, because we see these kids push the ball instead of getting to a set point and shooting it. Right.
Yeah.
And they're really saying the reason why they're pushing the ball is because when they learned to do that, the ball was too big for them and the rim was too high. So that was their strategy right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you got to kind of unlearn and relearn. And if they're young, that's a lot easier to do than maybe someone like me.
Right.
But if I at 46 years of age was able to change my shot up a bit for the better.
Yeah.
Then, right. Anyway,
absolutely.
So you got to be able to shoot the ball. You got to be a great athlete. You've got to try to get this thing to be the best athletic version of you.
Yes.
And then you have to stop your man. That's where I'm seeing too, who is a dog on defense?
Right.
Who is the up and coming that wants to be a dog on defense? And I don't know if I see that very much today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think those 3 things really make up, I think, what's going to make you a good basketball player.
Yeah.
And, these kids, they're all so young and they've got high hopes and they all say they want to be pro. But then it's okay, if you want to make a living at this, you have to be in those categories of those 3 things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
So anyway, that's just my kind of, I always took pride in playing defense. I wasn't the most highly skilled player, right?
Yeah.
Being now on that this last season now, I've been working on a little bit of shooting with these guys has really made my job pretty exciting and gives me a little bit of novelty outside of the weight room to kind of do something extra. But again, it all ties into the same thing.
Yeah. No, I love that. Hey, first off, when I was going back and looking at your IG, I'm like, has he really not posted a main story or a main feed post since 2024? Because I see you all the time, right? And you're always posting the stories. And I know you're always videoing, right? Which I love. Are you taking that in real time and then showing these athletes, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I need you to change next. Are you doing a lot of that in session?
So it really depends.
Okay.
And I would say it depends on the age, the capability, and the training background of the athlete, right? So there are
Sure.
certain times where I will take those videos and I will not show or reference it to a single athlete in that session because it's
Yep.
not relevant, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give them simple output-based cues, fundamental elements, and have them focus on one or two things. And that's all I want them to hit because they're young, they're untrained, they just haven't, I don't want to say earned the right, but they don't
I know
need
what you
to
mean.
see those
They
positions.
just need to train. They need to train.
Exactly. They just
Yeah.
got to engage in the process and continue to work through it. And I think we're always afraid of things looking sloppy or things looking
sure.
poor, but that's when they're learning, right? So
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
when yesterday we were doing linear excels, had a really young group of kids, couple first day guys, and must have been a million stumbles coming out of our half kneeling starts. And so,
Yeah.
but you know what? Like, it wasn't like, oh God, I got to show them what they're doing wrong and I'm going to change the position and do something different. It's like, no, I'm just going to give them opportunities to work through it. Hey, we're not going to stumble next time. Let's move our hands just a little bit faster.
Right.
And all of a sudden it gets a little cleaner. Like, they figure it out. So we give them chances to self-organize a better strategy. Now, there are athletes that we work with within the same groups, right, who are relatively elite, right? So they're varsity athletes, they're Division I, they're professional. They've been doing this for a while, and it does benefit them to have an understanding of what context I want to see or what cues I'm looking for or what positions are relevant. So then I will take those videos and here and there, I will take select opportunities to say, hey, I want to show you something on your first rep. Did you see how you did this? And then I gave you that cue, right? And you changed your focus. And on the next rep, do you see how that changed the movement? This is what I want it to look like. And I want it to feel like that second rep felt for you. Did you feel how this happened? And so now I'm correlating something that we're seeing on the video. I'm giving them context as to what efficient and effective movement looks like. And then I'm tying that right back into how did that feel different for you? Were you able to capture that sensation and own that? Because that's what it needs to feel like.
Yeah.
Or, let's say we're doing our base stealing start because we work with a lot of baseball. So that's why I reference that a lot.
Sure.
Like, hey, did you feel how when we moved your feet out wider, right? We got a wider plant angle and we were able to move you more horizontally and you had a little bit more time to actually push and gain ground through each step. Whereas this other one, you kind of got stuck at the beginning. It took you longer to get through that directional step because your feet were more under your body and you had to shift everything. So I'll show that. And then on top of that, I'll also use it as a debrief. So I kind of take those elements and I end every day by looking back at the videos that I took. So it's like film session for me.
Yeah.
I'll break down the positions. I'll sometimes take screen captures and tie them together. And then I'll use that and send them to the athletes that it's relevant for. I'll say, hey, this is something we're working on. I want you to notice, here's this rep. Here's this rep. You did a great job of this on this rep, but here's something we can look to improve. Do you see that? And that way, not only am I taking an opportunity to give them more of an understanding of what efficient and effective movement looks like, because I think that's underappreciated. Like, some kids just don't know what we want an acceleration to look like. And once they do, it's actually super valuable for them. They want to know that information. And now they can start to watch their own film and say, hey, like, I've noticed I'm not pushing as well here. I'm not striking back as much as I wanted to. Perfect. Let's use that as our cue next time. That's our singular focus next time you're in the gym. Let's keep hitting that. And I think that's super valuable, but it also gives me an opportunity to build a relationship with them, right? I'm building rapport. I'm building a back and forth with them where they know that I'm not just there to work them hard. I'm not just there to coach them up in the live. I'm actually taking the time to review the film and see where the opportunity is for them to get better. Because as you know, like, we work in a group setting. So we got up to 10 athletes at a time.
Yeah.
We run multiple groups back to back to back. So I just don't have the ability to dive in with every individual in that group. It's just not realistic. But I can take video as I coach them. And then I can use that to dive into the nuance later if that's relevant to that person. And so that's just been a super useful tool. And then I kind of just started throwing that up on social media as a story for a while because I was doing it every day anyway. And I figure, like, I like sharing this and I like using it almost like a self-reflection journal at the end of the day to kind of compose my thoughts. So I think it's been useful for my own development, and it's also been really good for the athletes there.
Now you've got a young, new, fresh face crop of coaches.
Okay.
And I think a lot of them really inherently believe like I have to have a massive online platform to then sell my in-person services. How do you explain to them like, no, I mean, is it just literally what you just told them and like distilling it down to, hey, instead of trying to be famous and maybe get in front of little Johnny and his parents, how about you just go to little Johnny's game and meet the other parents and try and do an event? How do you help them understand that or connect those dots?
Unfortunately, for many of them, it's like abs. You kind of have to get it first to realize that it's not actually that important.
Yes.
And it's not as valuable as you think that it is.
Yes.
I knew that in writing this book, it was going to take a while to catch on.
Yep.
Because it fights against our human psychology. I mean, I'm an anthropology minor. I know this stuff.
Right.
It fights against our human herd behavior. It fights against our desire to be liked, to be part of a group, for status, perceived status. Whether we actually have status or not is a whole different question, but perceived status.
Yes.
It fights against all of that. So whether it is objectively the right thing or not, how do I explain that to somebody? What I do is I say to people, look around you at everything that you own right now in this room that you're in. And if I'm with them physically, I'll point out stuff. But if I'm not, I'll be like, okay, I got a microphone, I got a water bottle, I got a computer, I'm wearing clothing, right? I've got headphones, whatever you see, I've got a pen. Okay, now also think about the last, call it 3 people or services that you hired for anything.
Yep.
Plumbers, tutors for your kids, whatever. Do you even know if any of these people or companies have a social media account?
Yeah. Yes.
Let alone whether they were the primary influence for you buying.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you even know if they have a social media account? And that's often when the light bulb goes off in their head and they're like, no. Or maybe sometimes they're like, yeah, I hired a coach. And what I do then is I explain to them, I'm like, okay, well, you hired a fitness coach.
Yep.
Who you have been following in the fitness industry for a long time.
Yes.
Well, then I explain to them the difference between being a maximizer and a satisfizer. And the fact that most consumers for most projects, or for most products or services, are what's called satisficers. Said another way, they're wildly ignorant towards what makes a thing good or not good. The majority of people who hire anybody who works in fitness or strength conditioning are wildly ignorant towards what makes a good strength and conditioning
absolutely.
coach.
Yeah.
The problem, though, that we encounter is that we're not.
Yes.
We're maximizers for our own thing.
Yep.
And the groups that we participate in, the people that we surround ourselves with, and as a result, the filter bubbles that surround us algorithmically in our online digital worlds, reinforce the only thing really that we maximize in.
Yeah.
Said another way, you're too close to your own damn world.
Yes.
So, yes, maybe the one thing that you love and you obsess over, fitness, is the place where you hired somebody who is a fitness influencer who you like.
Yeah.
But think about the people who are hiring your services, right? Are they the type of people who are, ask 5 of your clients, do this. Here's, I never actually thought about this, but this would be a fun experiment. Ask 5 of your clients to flip on their Instagram or their TikTok and look at their feed.
Oh yeah. No, I've done this actually. A couple have shown me just randomly because
it'd be interesting to see what's on there.
It's wild. It's
so
even
different
than what. Yes. Yep. It's
There's
so different
from anything you see.
Yeah.
From anything you see. And there's probably nothing that has to do with fitness on that feed.
Yes.
Even millennials and Gen Zs, completely different people we're talking to. Like one generation. Millennials, you could lead with a Kim Kardashian approach. Seriously, it's like a keeping up with the Joneses approach. So sexy, and I want to be part of the club kind of thing.
Yep.
Gen Z is measured. They are well researched. They know more about your company than you do, and they're cautious.
Yeah.
Like completely. So like you have to think about these things, and I think the benefit of a good operator, within a franchise system is like, we'll develop that for you. Just implement it.
Sure.
You don't have to think about like, oh my God, what do I do with my messaging here? Like that's our job.
Yeah, sure.
You just got to kind of be that good operator that knows how to put a game plan into play.
Sure. Okay. So again, I always try and think about the people that are listening to this show. And I know there's a lot of people that I've talked to, either they want to own their own business someday, right? They just want to grow their own personal training brand, maybe work in somebody else's shop. But one of the things that you have to have just be so buttoned up on at this point is systems and operations, right? And it's one thing when you're just getting started, right? And everything is just fly by the seat of your pants. You kind of know how you do things. But I would love to hear from you. Like, what are some things that you had to do to really button up your systems, your processes, and all the back end stuff that maybe isn't exciting, but that can really help drive your business?
Yeah. Well, the evolution of the business now, let me give you what we give our franchisees. I think
that would be great.
A good way to look at it, right? So if you were to sign a franchise with us today, April 30th, 2025, tomorrow I would be having a founder welcome call with you, talking about the way you want to run your business, introducing you to the pre-opening software that we use to get you from signing that agreement to opening your doors. Our software has 170 steps.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah.
And I'm talking site selection, lease negotiation, custom branding package, hiring, getting your signage, equipment order, floor plan design. And my entire team takes you through this process. So we help you through it. The franchisee is also expected to understand who we are. So they go through a learning management system that teaches you about Metabolic, our culture.
Right.
There are learning paths for owners, to GMs, to trainers that are specific to the roles that they're required to do.
Yep.
To be part of our team. We have first year calls specific to first year units that have specific first year problems. We have market specific calls, whether it's A, B, or C markets. We have system wide calls. We use the whole Office 365 suite for communication, where we have different teams that we're speaking to. I'll even to give you an example, I'm pulling up our categories of our 4 teams that our people can have access to and commit to. So first year people, brand announcements, brand standards, digital marketing questions, music questions, ongoing operational support, pre-sale questions, social media questions, movement standards, workout standards, and website questions.
Wow.
It's just, when I say it's a machine, this is why people buy a franchise.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's to have access to support if you need it. Now, if we do our job correctly, we are firm believers that 1 year in, 12 months, 13 months in, you should be like, Brandon, I love you, buddy, but I got it from here.
Right.
And I'll be like, well, whenever you need help, I'm just a message away. But if we do our job, 80% of the system should be self-sufficient after their first year. And I'm open to admitting to there's not 100% of the system is kicking ass, right? You kind of have 20% that are just these overachievers that do everything right. You get 60% in the middle that are really, really good, and then you got 20% of people that are underachieving that could be doing better. And that's a real healthy franchise system, and that's kind of what our system looks like right now.
Well, I think that's most things in life, right? Figure out what they want and sell them that. So in my complete coach cert, and I've talked about it in other places as well, but I talk about the assessment process and I talk about the questions that I ask early on, but arguably one of the most important that I ask is the magic wand question. And this actually came up in it's not our staff meeting, but in our team meeting yesterday at IFAST. One of the new coaches, wanted to know more about the magic wand question. So it's very simple. I will be talking to a client or athlete and I'll basically tell them, hey, look, if I could get you any result in the next 3, 6, 12 months, what would that be? And so if you ask this correctly, your client or your athlete, your prospect will tell you exactly what they want to get out of working with you. They will tell you how to sell them. So the first point here is you got to listen, right? Do they want to get bigger? Do they want to get faster? Do they want to get stronger? Do they want to lose weight? Do they need to improve their mobility, right? And this is hard because sometimes when we work with somebody, we've got our own biases. We've got, the agenda that we want to create for them. But if you really listen to what they say, they're going to tell you what they need to hear. So there's 2 steps to this. The first one is listening, right? And being locked in and understanding where they're coming from and their real goals and dreams and aspirations. But then the second piece, and this comes back to being a good trainer or coach, is you got to demonstrate that you can help them do that. And so obviously the sponsor for this week is Hawken Dynamics. Well, the great thing about using force plates in my assessment now with all my basketball players is that I can show somebody very clearly what their performance profile looks like. It could be their jump height. It could be their breaking metrics. It could be asymmetries. Doesn't matter. I've got all the metrics I could ever hope for. But if I've got a kid that, is bouncy and elastic and he wants to play Division I, he can jump out of the gym. And I can show you, hey, look, you're jumping as high as a lot of my high-level college players or even my pros. That's elite, right? So you have this superpower. But when I look at all your force numbers, right, and it's like this, the spider graph, the spider web, I say, here is an average Division I player, and this is you. And it's like half that. It's very clear, hey, look, you're not up to standard. But I can tell you, hey, here's what we need to do to fix that. Here's how we make you a Division I player. And so that's what's really fun about this is like now, not only can I show them, hey, look, you've told me you need to get bigger, faster, stronger. Okay. Let's just say stronger for now. You want to get stronger. Well, very clearly, this shows you're on the right track because yes, you can jump, but all your strength, all your force numbers are very low compared to where they need to be. Now, here's what we're going to do to help you do that. I'm telling you, when you can connect those dots for somebody like that, you're off to the races, right? And that's just in my world, right? If you're in fat loss, hey, somebody says, I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay, great. They're going to say, well, how am I going to do that? And you can lay out, hey, I need you to train with me 3 times a week. We're going to do a mix of superset based training. We're going to get you moving in the gym. We're going to do some explosive repeats. You don't have to use these terms. I'm doing this for you. We're going to do some conditioning at the end, higher intensity, 8 to 10 seconds on, 50 seconds off. So some alactic aerobic work. We're going to get great sessions in 2 to 3 times a week. I need you to go for a brisk walk 2 other days out of the week, 30 to 45 minutes. And then here's the nutrition program I need you to use, or here's the nutrition coach I need you to use. So you can give them the plan. And then you can also go back and just say, hey, look, Susie, hey, look, Jenny was like you too. She was in the same exact position as you. And this is what she did. And she had amazing results. So I think this is the real play here, guys. Like if you know their goal and you have the confidence that you can help them achieve it, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. And now part of this is just time, right? Like I've seen and evaled so many basketball players at this point, whether it's an NBA player, a Division I player, high school player's parent. Like I can talk to any of them and explain to them very clearly what we need to do to get them on the right path. So that's your goal here is you have to figure out what they want, and then you can turn around and use that to sell them on your programming. I think once you get into the 10, 15, 20 plus year mark, like you've had some war wounds, right? You've had some wins, you've had some successes, there's some battle scars. But most importantly, I feel like once you get over about that 10 to 15 year mark, like you've got this core philosophy, right? Whether you know it or not, you got a core philosophy in place. But I know one thing about guys like you, you're always learning, right? You're always evolving. So I think what I'm most curious about next is how is your programming or coaching evolved over the past 2 to 3 years? So you got your core philosophy. What are you still tweaking and working with?
I'll even break it up even further. I kind of broke it up. And when you asked that question in my head just now, I kind of think of it as like the first 5, the middle 10, and the last 5. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first 5, and I had this conversation with a lot of young professionals, and they, where did you start? Where did you learn? What did you read? Where did you go to? When you and I started out, it was books, it was site visits. Then Elite FTS came, but you had to pick up a phone, call someone, go somewhere and see it to be able to get that information. But when you're younger and you're first starting out, and this isn't a negative, and I think sometimes people think it is, but you mimic and mirror what you see and experience.
Yes.
So the coaches you have around you, who you look up to. I was a power lifter when I first started. So Louis Simmons and Westside Barbell, and even the staff I worked with, everybody was doing reverse hypers. Everybody was doing glute ham raises. Everybody squatted to a box. I can't look back on there and say, oh, what was I doing? Because like at that point, that's what I knew.
Yes.
And that's what I've seen. And that was appropriate for the experience I have, which we're all limited by, and I'm still limited by to this day. So like I did what I respected, what I valued, what I admired, and my programs were reflective of that. So that first 5 years, you really don't have enough time, enough reps. You can't accelerate that process. You have to see reps. You have to interact with athletes. You have to coach them. You have to see results. So a lot of things are theory and ideas until you actually have someone that trusts you enough to let you apply them to see what does and does not work. That's a process. So for the first 5 years, I see that as something that when we were trying to manage that process, those influences had a great deal on me because that's all I knew. And then you get to the middle 10, and this is probably the most dangerous part of my career, was like that middle 10. When I started to get a little bit of skin in the game, you start to get that itch and feeling that, I got some stuff figured out. Like, I'm having some success. People on Instagram and social media, and I'm doing these presentations or these podcasts, and there's like all this audience of affirmation, and you're doing these things and you're getting this feeling because now you feel like you have a little bit of competence. You dug your feet in the sand a little bit and you've figured some things out. You've been able to push boundaries. So the pros of that during that middle 10 years is we were always looking for what was next. How can I be on the cutting edge? How can I be outside the box? How can I be the first person to use isoinertial flywheel training devices? Like, what are the cool kids using? I'm writing programs not only to improve my kids, but to impress my colleagues. So it wasn't just about who was in front of me and who I was responsible for. I wanted Mike Roberts to look at my program and say, hey, man, like Ryan's pretty sharp. He's got to figure it out. Like, I'm trying to impress people with what I'm programming, and I've had a lot of great influences. But you start to lose sight of like what you're really trying to do, but it's vital in your growth because again, you're starting to look at different ways to train, different ways to implement things, and you're pushing the boundaries of what you do, but at the same time having that need to have validation and credibility. So in the middle, that's what you're kind of feeling, right? And then like the last 5 years of my career, and it's really become where now my life experience is kind of catching up, and my training and my coaching experience is catching up to my life experience. So I've learned some things on both sides of it. I've had the ability to fail forward and make some mistakes and go through that. I've went my whole career avoiding this one event happening, which is getting fired or getting removed from a team. And once that happens and the Band-Aid's ripped off, now you can kind of re-examine and look at what you're trying to do. But you get to that point. You were pushing to stay on the cutting edge in that middle 10. Now you're on the back end of it. You're getting a little bit older, a little bit established. And what I find now is you still have to push to catch up to those individuals that are they're applying pressure. Like on Instagram, I watch them and I'm like, man, I used to be that creative, or I used to question things to try to do that. How can I stay away from just saying, yeah, I've tried that and it didn't work? Or, hey, I like these movements, these strategies, this periodization model, whatever it may be. I'm just going to do that because that makes sense. No, I want to bring as many young coaches around me that I can, because they have that curiosity and they have that fire. And sometimes they're naive enough because they don't have enough experience, where they don't look at it as the same lens that I have. So when people speak to me, it's like, you ever done box squats with bands? And it's like, kind of take a second and you're like, yeah, I've had some experience of that. What's been your experience? And then you let them speak and like talk about what they're experiencing, because they may know something that I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a learning opportunity that you can kind of figure out. But like, I've at the point in my life where I search out individuals and I want to know what they do well. And I'm not afraid to admit it. I used to go visit people and I'm like, I don't like the way they're teaching that bench press or that squat. I would coach it like this. Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? And I've completely shifted that. When I go to a facility or I meet a coach, I want to know where you provide value, where do you make an impact, and what skills and traits do you have as a practitioner that has allowed you to assume the position that you have? Yeah. What is that? Let me take that. Because that'll make us better. That makes my kids better. It makes our athletes better, our staff. So that's where my focus is, you know? And so like the last 5 years, I have this mantra I tell myself, and it's day one, but better. And what I mean by that is the first warm-up I did at Robert Morris with Todd Hammer, who's my first mentor. He had to go out of town. I've never ran a warm-up in my life. No dynamic warm-up, have never done it. And he said, hey, you got to cover Friday training. I got a few weeks on the job. And I'm like, I am petrified. Like I'm looking up all like Eric Cressy, and I'm looking up, you know, Parisi Speed School and all these coaches. And I'm like, how do I run this warm up? And I remember looking at that sheet and looking at the exercises, practicing it in the mirror of how to figure this out. At some point in my life, I viewed the warm up just as a warm up. That excitement and that anticipation and that paranoia locked me in to making sure that that thing was ran and executed at the highest level. From the first time I trained a basketball team to field hockey, and every time that I stand in front of an athlete, I don't ever want to lose, and I still do it to this day. I don't want to ever lose those, you know, that butterfly or that anxiety that I have before I step in front of a group of young athletes and student athletes, because our responsibility is so great. Like they're entrusting us with their health, they're entrusting us with their development. And I want to have that curiosity and that white belt mentality, because that's what's allowed me not to really have to work ever. To this day, everything that we've been through, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it at some point when we get to the final questions, but everything I've been to, like, I never get tired of this. In the sense of like, there's always something to learn. Like I'm going to leave this conversation and there's going to be something that I'm going to re-examine or that I articulated. And now I go back and be like, man, I'm going to go look at some of my old programs. And you'd be shocked to know how many things I was doing better back then that I need to re-implement now, because I put so much time into what I was doing. So I think when I look at how things have changed, probably the biggest thing that's changed has been me. And how I view the training process, how I interact with the kids, what I get excited about, you know, what gets my attention and our kids' attention, and then other things where we can navigate that, but it's not the end of the world, you know? But I think that's kind of been like the biggest thing, is just continuing to challenge myself and our staff with how we're doing what we do, like every single day, you know? So I think that's the most exciting thing, is just not getting bored with getting better and finding problems and searching out solutions for those problems. And because that's like where the real work really begins. So I think we have to continue to stay curious.
Yeah, I love that.